Hey everyone, in this video I want to talk about webhooks, the new functionality in Cherwell 10.0 that allows real-time integration with other systems so that other systems can push data to your Cherwell installation on demand whenever there's something new to be pushed out. This was initially designed specifically to support an AWS integration as well as a Slack integration, but it's certainly not limited to that. It can allow your system to integrate with just about any system out there that has a webhooks configuration on their end. Basically, on those systems, you provide a URL, and we'll see in a second that Cherwell gives you the URL to just drop into that other system. And if there is some authentication that's needed, Cherwell has some support for that as well. So let's get into it. So in order to create a webhook, we have to create a new blueprint. Then we'll go to Managers and Webhooks. You can see I've played around with creating one already, but let's go ahead and create a new one. So we'll just call this Demo. It's always a good idea to provide a description for these things, not just to remind you later on, but also if you want to share any of these webhooks or any functionality in Cherwell really as part of maps. Most of the time, provider type will be other, but you can see Amazon and Slack are two. There's actually some functionality that's special to those providers that the webhooks engine has in place to directly support those providers. Endpoint extension is basically the URL that you want to use to access this webhook. And you can see there's kind of a base already set up. It is accessed through the Cherwell API. You can't see this through Swagger, but you can use this copy button to get the full endpoint. So you can see mine is my machine's name /Cherwell API /API /webhooks, and let's add an endpoint extension. So we'll say demo webhook, and you can see it added that to the full endpoint there. On the authentication tab, you can specify whether to use no authentication or basic authentication. I'm going to select none just for ease of use, but for basic, this is a username and password. This has nothing to do with any username or password in the Cherwell system. It doesn't matter if you're using Windows authentication or SAML authentication. These are basically shared secrets that are intended to be shared from the whatever system is sending the webhook to Cherwell. So all Cherwell does is verify that the username and password that's been provided to it is what you specified here, just as an additional check. You could think of it kind of like a handshake. Then the action is where we specify what we're going to do when this webhook endpoint is actually hit. So let's we can either pick an existing OneStep or create a new one. Let's create a new one. Let's call it Demo Webhook. And one thing to note is that in the conditions section of the kind of the main overview screen, show custom tokens is set to webhooks. There are a couple different options here, but basically by setting this to webhook, we get a few extra tokens that we can use, or one in particular that we can use in our OneStep to get access to the post body, so whatever is posted to the webhook. So just to do something super simple, and obviously this is a OneStep, so anything you can do in OneSteps you can do in the webhook OneStep. But let's just add the super simple show a pop-up, and we'll right click here and you'll see webhook content body. This is the raw body that is posted to the webhook. So if it's XML, it's an XML document. If it's JSON, it's a JSON document. So I'll select body, and we'll actually see what this looks like when I go to test it in just a second. Let's give it a caption. This is the request. Everything else looks fine. Yep, and we'll say OK. So demo webhook, let's select that. We'll run it as English, that's fine. That's pretty much it on the configuration side, but let's go ahead and test that one step. So if I click test one step, I have a box here, which all this is intended for is for me to specify a sample body. So in my case, let's say I want to use JSON, so we'll need that sort of thing. Super simple body. Let's zoom on that, in on that, just so you can see what I put. So just a completely empty JSON object, and we'll click run. And you can see I get a pop-up specifying the body that I sent it. That's all it does. And of course it was successful. So let's do something a little bit more complicated. Let's say this webhook is just going to send me a list of currently logged in users or something like that. So let's say users, let's say this is a JSON array, so we'll put square brackets there, and Joe, Bob, Jim. And as you might imagine, most webhook bodies are going to be a little bit more complicated than this, and it really depends on what the system is. So AWS is going to send something different from Slack. It's going to send something different from whatever system you're using, and it's entirely possible that it'll send you a lot more data than you actually care about. So the next step after running this, testing it, would be to jump back into the OneStep. And let's say, instead of showing a pop-up, let's get rid of this. Actually, let's just add something before it. So we will do something like a step-through collection. And collection to step-through. Well, we can't quite do body because it's not a collection, but let's do something a little bit different, right? So first, we need to extract the names that we used in our example and put them into a collection. So let's update a variable. Let's say variable names, data type, let's say JSON array, or let's just say JSON. And we'll start with body. We'll just say request body for this, right? Then let's create another action here. And what we'll do is create another variable, let's say names, type is JSON array, and we'll pull out find object, find array, and that would be, I think I called it names, right? Okay, we're setting that to names. Now step through collection, and collection to step through will be names, and let's try this again. Names. Okay, there we go. Now, oh, it still doesn't like that. Okay, so now that we've gotten into this step through collection, we're stepping through the names collection. Let's just show our pop-up. And for the contents, all we're going to do is show step through collection result. And let's get rid of this show pop-up. Make sure everything is as we intended. And let's say OK. Choose demo webhook. Let's test the OneStep again. So now we do have to create our body all over again. So names, and what do we say? Joe, Bob, Jim. Make sure that looks like valid JSON. It does. Joe, Bob, Jim. And there we go. That's how to create a basic webhook and test it out. Now, obviously, we would want to save it. And let's first copy this endpoint. Say OK. Oops. I want to set that back to none. OK. We have this demo webhook here. Obviously, we will want to publish the blueprint. And then once this blueprint is published, then we can use that URL, drop it into our other system, and have that other system call that webhook. To test this out, you could use something like Fiddler or Postman, just to make sure that everything's published and an actual sample body works just fine once it's all published. Obviously, you have that test the OneStep functionality within the webhook manager and editor, but it's always good to do an additional kind of full integration test once everything's published. But that's basically it. This allows just about any system to communicate with Cherwell in real time, so that you don't have to do say a scheduled import or anything like that from the other system and have some lag. So hopefully this was helpful and gives you some insight into how to use this cool new feature. It sounds like they're actually working on some extensions to it and improvements to it over the next several versions, so it'll be exciting to see exactly how that pans out. I think this is going to be a super powerful feature for Cherwell, and I'm actually about to do another video, so stay tuned for this one, on how this, coupled with a few other features, some of which have been in Cherwell for a while and some of which are relatively new to Cherwell, but how all of those features in total make Cherwell kind of the epicenter of your entire operation, or have the potential to do that. So stay tuned for that one. If you want to get notified when I publish that video, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell. If you have thoughts or questions about how to use webhooks, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to answer any questions you might have. And like this video and share it with your friends and colleagues. Thanks for watching.